So I had an interesting thought the other day about the value of college. And there's been several articles lately that have come out to say, is it really worth it to go to college or is it not? And I think for certain roles, yes, it absolutely is. But for a lot of others, it's getting questionable to say, is college really worth the amount that you spend? And so today I've got an interesting philosophy or an interesting idea that someone could try instead of going to college by doing something a little bit different. So I looked up what is the national average for a year of tuition to college, and they said the in-state average is about $11,000 a year. Now it'll vary quite a bit throughout the different the country areas, but about $11,000 is a year's tuition. Then on top of that, you have to think about your books and your expenses, your commuting, all of that goes into your housing, where you're going to live. All that goes into the year too. If you were out of state, I think it was more like $30,000 a year. And if you're going to a private college, it was more like $40,000 a year. So let's just say you're the average person. You're going to spend $11,000 a year on college. So your four-year degree is going to cost you let's say $45,000. So you're going to spend 4 years of time getting that degree, and you need, for your job that you're going to eventually get, to make up that difference. And if you go to these other colleges, maybe a degree costs you $120,000. And now the big problem these days is people tend to borrow money to go to college, and they hope that there's a payback behind it. And for the right degree, yes, it is. I went to school for electrical engineering. I chose a really hard degree because I wanted to learn how to build animatronic robots. And it was kind of interesting. I was working in the entertainment industry after college, and I didn't, the amusement park that I was working with closed. Had to fall back on my degree. It was interesting, they just hired me because I had that piece of paper. They didn't know much about me. I didn't interview really well, but they're like, well, you've got the right degree and we need people. So that's why I got hired. And been an engineer for 24 years. It's been a good career. I would not have gotten that job had I not had that piece of paper. But there's a lot of jobs out there that you really don't need a degree for. And so it's interesting because there's something called a Coast FIRE. And FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And the idea is the more money you get into an account earlier, the more years it has to compound. And so I was always told, you go to college because over your lifetime you're going to make $1 million more than someone who doesn't go to college. And you hear that, you're going to earn $1 million more by going to college. You're going to earn $1 million more if you get your education. Well, it's interesting because if you are young and you had that same $40,000, then let's say at age 19 or 20, you put $40,000 into the stock market through doing ETFs such as VOO or VTSAX. I like a pipeline ETF called MLPA. You can spread your investments around, but if those investments grow on average 10% per year, if inflation stays low at 2.5%, 2 to 3%, somewhere in that range, and if you eventually plan on living off your investments, just putting that $40,000 in those investments, by the time you're 65, will have grown to $1 million, or the equivalent. It's inflation adjusted. So that idea of, hey, if you go to school, you're going to earn $1 million over the career. But it's interesting because if you put that same dollar amount that you're going to spend on college, if you put it into the stock market and let it grow over the course of your whole lifetime, you're also going to earn $1 million. And I guess then you didn't have to spend the time going to school and spending all the time doing it. So it's really interesting. If you want to look up Coast FIRE, there's some fun calculators. Just look up, Google search Coast FIRE calculator. And the younger you are when you put these dollar amounts into the stock market, the more benefit they will have. Now, the normal people, they're going to work. You go to college, you get done, then you go work. You're going to spend your whole life working, and hopefully slowly over time you're going to save enough so that by the time you retire at age 65 or 67, you have enough to live on for the rest of your life. If instead, when you're young, you put in your $40,000 into the market, just let it grow, you're still gonna have to work your whole life, but that money you put in early is gonna generate that extra $1 million. And so over the course of your career, you're gonna need to save less than the person who went to college because of the time value of money. So it's a really interesting thought. You know, if the young people these days just spent the money on college investing in the stock market instead of going to college, you might end up better off, particularly if you're going to study something like history or elementary ed, or I don't know, something else. There's a lot of degrees that really don't have a good payoff. I still think engineering and the STEM fields do have a good payoff, but and they're worth pursuing, but there's a lot of other degrees that I really don't. And so if instead of paying for college, you just put that money in investments, let it grow and compound over the course of a normal career, you're going to end up in the same place. That money will create that extra $1 million. Same as how the education potentially might have ended up being an extra $1 million of difference if you get the right degree. For my sake, engineering, yeah, I think I earned that extra $1 million because of my career. But if you make the wrong choice in what you study, it may make no financial difference to you, and then you're out all that money. So, you know, there's a lot of young folks that they get out of college and they've got like $100,000 worth of debt, $200,000 worth of debt. It's really interesting because as you're younger, if you put that same value of money in the stock market and let it compound year after year, you'll end up with some huge numbers by the time you're 65. So there's that idea, thought of, hey, it might be possible just to invest when you're younger instead of going to college. You're still gonna have to work your whole life, but if you get that investment in there and let it keep compounding, it can earn $1 million over your life just because you invested early in life. So if you like that idea, give me a thumbs up for this concept. Take a look at the Coast Fire calculators, learn about financial independence, learn about investing, and it's also an important education, becoming financially savvy. So we'll see you, bye.